What we'd like to do is to talk to you at a macro level about what we see, share some facts and figures about what's been going on in the association space in the last couple of years, which is a lot. Then we want to talk about some of the specific, we think, tectonic changes we're seeing in the association landscape in terms of business models and dues models, et cetera. And then we'd like to wrap up. I'd like to share some of the really cool things that's going on with AI, emerging things with AI in the association space. I think you'll find that interesting. So does that sound okay? Terrific. So just to start, the scope and pace of change in the association world is the greatest that it has been since we started doing this in the last 20 years. We have never seen associations changing this much, this fast. Fundamental changes to the way they think about their business, the way they think about membership, reinventing the value proposition, radically changing the model, radically rethinking the dues model. None of that was thinkable 5 years ago. They would have laughed you out of the room 5 years ago. Everyone is talking about these things now. So something really happened, right, between COVID and now. What is it? Changing member expectations. It's been happening for a while, right? As things got more digital. COVID just accelerated all of that. People's expectations really changed. They're a lot less patient than they used to be. It's a thing. They're a lot less patient. They want much more clear directive value, and associations have to respond to that. They do not have time to poke around your website looking for what they want. You have to be able to put it right in front of them. So that's one. They're making up for losses during the pandemic. A lot of associations got smacked, right? If you depended on event revenue, you were in trouble. You guys didn't necessarily have that problem, but everyone felt the pain, and there's losses that have to be made up. Urgent need to diversify revenue and membership. Associations realized that their business models were vulnerable for the first time ever. Used to be, if you had a great event, you could do everything else wrong and you would be fine. Not true. Not just events. Open access is putting a lot of pressure on organizations that have big publishing businesses, right? They're feeling it. Budgets are cutting. So we need to find new sources of revenue and membership. What do you do as an organization when you've got as much market share as you're going to get? Where do you go look for members? What do you do when you've grown as much as you think you can grow in your core market? Where's the growth come from next? So there's real pressure to find different kinds of members. We'll talk about how people are doing that. And then they realized they actually could change, right? Before COVID, a lot of organizations had done things the same way forever and thought that's just the way that it was. COVID forced them to do things together. It forced them to make big changes. It forced them to do them fast. So now they know it's possible to do big things quickly together, and they want to do it, right? So we're seeing that happen, like the pace of change accelerate. And finally, there's a real optimism about associations. The good economy is a leading indicator of membership, right? So strong economy this year means good membership next year. So associations have a lot of faith that good things are coming next. And they shouldn't. Membership's really been rebounding. After big declines in 21 and 22, we are showing the highest rate of member growth since 2016. So in the last 10 years, this past year in 23. 49% of associations grew versus 26% in 21. So huge change, right? We're really seeing it ramp up. If you grew, your median increase would have been 6% last year versus a 5-year increase of 12%. So if you're growing, most of that growth just happened this past year. This is interesting and important. The median renewal rate has not changed and did not change through COVID. 81% overall, 63% for first-year members. So we didn't lose a lot of existing members during COVID. We stopped attracting new ones. And we're not keeping any more of them than we ever did before. If you're growing, it's because you're growing new member acquisition across the board. That's the only way to grow today, if your renewal rates are where they should be. So what are some of the key indicators of association growth? There's a study done every year. It's the Marketing General Membership Marketing Report. It comes out every year. If you haven't taken a look at it, you should. It's really probably the best piece of research done in this business. And you can download it from their website. It's got a lot of information, but we wanted to focus on what does a growing association look like? What makes them different from another association? If I look at a growing association, what am I going to see that I wouldn't see in an association that's not being that successful? One, they believe they have a compelling value proposition. Not what the members think, what they think. The association believes their value proposition is compelling. 50% of organizations do, 50% don't. That makes you think. Job security for us, for sure. But what's behind that? They're growing in new members. A growing association is growing new membership. They've developed one or more new benefits in the last year. So they're innovative. You see a little lower. They have formal innovation processes as well. So the numbers here are the number of all associations reporting that, not just the ones that are growing. So at the top, maybe half the associations are doing a lot of the right things. At the bottom, very few are. They've expanded their audience beyond their core members. And again, we'll talk about how they've done that. They have high renewal rates, 80%. Seems to be 80% for recurring, 60% for new members seems to be the tipping point in terms of high growth rate. They're increasing dues annually. Interesting. We're going to come back to that too. A lot of associations are afraid that the opposite would be true, but we'll get into why that is. And then they're growing their millennial demographic. Again, no surprise, but if your membership is aging out, you're not growing anymore. So associations that are heavy boomer are struggling to grow, and those that are growing millennials are really enjoying high growth. So what are some of the things that they do? Again, this is from the study that other associations that are not growing are not doing. They're using segmented messaging. You can see almost 60% of associations do that. They have highly effective email acquisition programs. So if you're a growing organization, you have figured out email, as you all have. They have an ongoing communications program for new members, right? So they're onboarding new members, right? For up to 12 months is what we're seeing, right? To drive those renewal rates. They're using what's in it for me messaging when they're talking to members. This is interesting to us. They say their members join for best practices. That is the only reason for joining that stands out in a growth organization. Training, for networking, for best practices seems to be highly correlated with growth. Why? We think because it's an everyday value kind of thing, right? It's something, best practices are something you're going to use every day in your work and your career. So it's a continuous source of value, but it jumps out. They've increased their engagement budget, not acquisition, not retention, not win back, engagement. That's where they're investing their dollars. They're using paid digital to do renewals. Seems like a nit, but if you figured out how to use paid digital at that level, you're doing really well and you're driving renewals for one. They've introduced a combination individual organizational membership. We will talk about that. Very few organizations are doing it, but is a real indicator of membership growth, and they're doing effective acquisition versus organic social. So they've figured out how to use social. Again, very few organizations are there, but those that are doing really well. So no one's doing all of these things. If you were, you would really be killing it. You guys are doing a lot of these things, as we know, but these are the things, and these are the only things, by the way, that jump out in the study as key differences between growth and non-growth associations. Interesting. Okay. So what about dues? Everyone is increasing dues today. Everyone. Dues increases are on the table with everyone we talk to for sure. Almost half of associations did it last year versus 30% in 2022. 90% of organizations have done it at least once in the last 10 years. We are aware that you have not. We know. But we wanted to hold this up to you. If you have not increased your dues in the last 10 or more years, your dues revenue is now down 35% in real terms. You're bringing in 35% less real money, and your expenses are up 35% in real terms. That's a huge swing. Smaller associations, membership-dependent organizations cannot withstand that kind of inflation and have been forced into a situation. Even the most skittish board is in a position where they have got to raise dues, right? And they're doing it. In the past, most organizations increase dues as needed or never. What we're seeing now is annual automatic increases in dues across the board. We also see that is highly correlated with membership growth, which is interesting. Now, why is that? Because their members are happy and they can get away with it, right? Or, right, because they're communicating their member value proposition more effectively so they can justify it. I don't know, but the organizations that are on top of their dues increases and they're doing it regularly are ahead of inflation and ahead of the member growth curve. We encourage people to do that. We've been encouraging our clients to move in that direction. When we work with them on dues increases, typically we're seeing a 3 to 5% a year annual increase. But you're seeing all kinds of catch up stuff, right? We've seen people jump as much as 10% in a year without problems. One state medical society, who shall remain nameless, increased it 50% in 1 year as a way to increase membership. So there's a lot of activity in this space, but this is happening for organizations.
Is this one on? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've done, what some of the changes are that we've seen in the marketplace in the last couple of years that have been effective for some organizations. Some organizations we've seen have been challenged to identify what's free to the public versus what's a members only benefit. This example, publicly sharing American College of Rheumatology, they were definitely on the side of giving everything away for free. Very little was members only. They have really high market share with the rheumatologists, as you might imagine. But they really saw themselves as a mission-based organization. We're going to give everybody everything for free. But they had pretty much penetrated the market. We'll show you another thing that they did. But so they really challenged themselves. So what was free versus what was only open to members? Part of it was members, everything was just on the website, very difficult to navigate. So a big part of going to this sort of all-inclusive model was a new web strategy to really serve up content and information and joining in a different way so that you were joining, you were giving them your preferences for what you wanted to see. So they were only serving the most valuable content. I have to say that's probably the number one complaint that we still get after 20 years is we get too many emails. I don't open them. I don't even know what's in the membership. Like a lot of places still haven't solved that. So the segmented messaging, setting your preferences, still hugely important, though a lot of people haven't nailed yet. They went in an all-inclusive model to really challenge themselves to say, what could we put behind the paywall, even if it really causes us a lot of internal pain, to justify higher dues price and incent more people not to freeload, which I know sometimes historically has been a problem here. So we don't have the freeloaders and people are actually paying for the benefits. So challenging themselves to think about what do we put behind the paywall so we can incent more people to join and thereby, the membership just has more value. So it was as much a change management issue as it was a dues model issue. Had to work and think differently together as an organization about how are we going to deliver value to our members.
This is another example. It's been emerging over the last 3 years, but the idea of creating it, we call them non-member associates, but it's a tiered membership where the bottom level is free. This is an example, a real world example. This is the American Chemical Society. They're one of the first that we know of that did this. And this is a pretty typical model, right? They call them community associates, and there's no cost to do that. So you sign up as a community associate, you get a very limited set of benefits. We give you a digital card, right? You get access to the newsletter. You get a very limited set of our discounts and affinity benefits, but you're in the club, right? So you feel like you're part of the community. You're in the community. You've opted in for messaging, so we can market membership to you. So they're marketing this type of engagement, this non-paying engagement, to folks who are not members and might not otherwise be, to start building engagement, to start building relationship, and to build a pool of hand raisers that they can market membership to moving forward. Now, the idea of free membership historically has been anathema, right? Because you just don't want to give anything away for free. Why would we ever pay for it? This is a different model. It's really seen as an on-ramp and a way of building an expanded community of folks to do that. Now, in this particular model, you can upgrade from basic to paid, but you can't go backwards, right? There's no downgrade button. So if you want to downgrade your membership, you have to drop and then re-sign up as a paid member. And I don't think there's a lot of folks that are necessarily doing that. What we're also seeing here is, this case, there's a free tier, and then there's a middle tier, and then there's a premier tier. Most places we see this, almost all the members are going to gravitate to one or the other, right? Either be in the middle, it'll be in the top tier. So the need for a middle tier isn't really obvious to us. We're seeing folks who just have this outside community and then this paid membership, and they're expanding it. Some organizations, Project Management Institute has been doing this for years, and they have millions of non-member members of their community that they can promote their products and develop marketing to. So we're seeing this, but again, this is something that was not really thinkable probably 5 years ago. And we hear lots of people thinking about it now. It's a different way to think about membership.
Next example, we call it a gift card membership for lack of a better term. So really, it's this example we did with a trade association that had sort of corporate type of members that were serving the association. So the idea is that there's a baseline set of included benefits for the organization and the membership. But what we do through the how we design the model was for providing them a credit, that they can apply to things that they were usually purchasing a la carte, like event attendance, sponsorship, advertising, that type of thing. So putting dollars into it that they were already spending with the organization that now they could use as a credit to do the same types of things. We priced it in a way that there were richer discounts if you were a member on those types of things than you would get if you a la carte purchased it. And some things we added were members only. So premium advertising placement, premium sponsorships at an event. Maybe you get to host a cocktail party or do something like that, but really things that were only available to this type of member. So what this did a couple important things, right? It simplified the member experience. Instead of making all these one-off purchases with the organization, we bundled it together to make it more valuable and a little bit less transactional feeling, because a lot of people can go very far to the side of making these very transactional. You're always upselling the member or the organization. Doesn't always feel that great. So this is giving them a lot more control over what they're purchasing with you, how they're spending the dollars, and it leaves them with the feeling that they're getting the maximum value out of the membership because they're in control of how the dollars are spent. The other thing it's doing for the association is it's giving visibility into what these members really want. What are they willing to pay for? What are they applying their credits to when they have the choice? So it's allowing them to refine the offer as they go. I think it will lead to packaging opportunities in the future once they get that data and insight into that. And it works really well where you had been in a very transactional relationship with organizations that we've seen be very effective. Next example is we have done this with a couple of different organizations as well. So these practice-based memberships, so they're different than group memberships. So in medical spaces and outside of medical spaces, right? So for individual owners or small to mid-sized practices, we're focusing on the individual membership benefits plus what can we provide to the business or the team of people that works in that office location that might not be eligible to be members of the organization, but could get value from a lot of the content that they probably already have. If it's business content, if it's CE, some organizations are partnering with other outside organizations that might serve those associates that work in the office, if you will. So what you're getting is maybe business owners who wouldn't have joined otherwise. Maybe they're not a physician or they're not an accountant, that's something like that. But you can also recruit the allied professionals into the membership. So providing value to the business, providing services to those associates in the office. It's a retention tool for the business owner, hugely valuable. They're probably spending the dollars somewhere else already. It's just not with you. They might be sending it to send them to their own specialty association or outside training, that type of thing. But we've listed some of the types of resources and benefits that people have offered. Prepackaged, some of it you can buy on the marketplace, some of it you probably already have, some of it you can partner with other people to develop. So it's not necessarily developing all this new content, but it's how do you bring it in under one umbrella, you make one single purchase, and then you've got the whole staff on board. And this is just an example of sort of the difference between this and a group practice that ABA offers is one example, right? 'Cause I didn't advance my own slide. The group model, similar to what we're doing today, right? We're providing complimentary discounts to groups, recognition, insurance, that type of thing. Really focus, and the practice is just really focusing more on the individuals within the practice themselves. Business owners really like this because it makes their life easier. They have that reassurance that they're providing these resources for their staff. They're vetted by the organization that they trust. So there's a lot that goes into that piece of it that's okay. I know you, I trust you, you're my association, and I trust you to take care of what my staff needs to learn, might be in best practices, training, that type of thing. But you have the halo effect of that if you can, it allows you to reach a new audience that you aren't necessarily reaching today.
So just some of the examples of what we started off with, which is really rethinking the membership model in radical ways to expand the definition of membership, to attract different peoples, to do it in different ways, to justify increased dues, which is important, but really to expand your market from where it is today. And again, all that's really been unfolding in the last few years. So it's an exciting, challenging, sometimes scary time for associations, but you will see more and more of this. This was the leaders. Most associations are going to move in this direction in the next few years, we believe. So let's talk about AI a little bit, right? We have clients that are way ahead of the curve on this, and I just wanted to share some of the things that they've been doing that they've been real successful with. We know there's a lot of talk about it. It's on top of everyone's mind. It's just really interesting to see places where it's really working and working well in the association space. Member service was probably one of the first places that people came after that. Automating routine service transactions. I need to change my password. I want to change my address. Hey, where's my membership card? Those types of questions. AI-powered chatbots are brilliant at handling things like that and allowing us to dedicate our human resources to more complex, high-value added member issues. That was baseline. The next level is in generating knowledge articles and FAQs for the organization that answer the questions we get. How do I do whatever, right? Register for this training. What's your position on this particular issue? Generative AI is very good at kicking those kinds of articles and information out at volume. So our human resources don't have to do it, and we can stay very current, and they can do it in a very responsive way as these questions come up. So it's a really interesting use to take member service to the next level of being able to answer these questions in real time, just using AI technology. Data and security was something we would not have thought of, but we have clients who are using AI to monitor their platforms to see who is on them. So is the person coming to our platform, are they human? Right? Are they a bad actor? Is this a safe transaction? Are they giving me data that's worth anything? AI is helping sift through all of that. So what they're getting from their platforms and their site is good and it's safe information and it's all being driven by AI and not by IT resources. Interesting. So this is the base case around AI. Member communications is really the next level. We have a client that was a pioneer in this space that's using AI technology to do really dynamic versioning. And just to give you an example to illustrate what it is, they have a member benefit update that goes out to all other members that shows them what benefits they've used and what the value of those benefits might be. And they had generated those pretty much manually for a really long time. They've now identified 10 sort of macro audiences, segments, if you will, or personas. And they're having AI create over 1,000 versions now of that article, tailored to those 10 audiences, highly versioned for them. And the goal is to have that degree of version content available, version value proposition, right? To put a different value proposition in front of you at every single touch point that you have with the organization. So not just your member benefit, but your newsletter that goes out, your renewal statement that goes out, right? All the other information that goes out. If you call the call center, that you're going to get that same highly versioned experience, up to 1,000 different versions of it at every single touch point, all powered by AI. They call it delivering omni-channel value, right? We're not in the world anymore, right? Where all they get from us is direct mail. We deliver value in a lot of different ways. How can we make sure we're delivering the same level of value the same way in every single one of our channels? And the answer in this case was AI is really the technology that's made that possible. Their goal, which impresses me, is to leverage the most recent data they have on you in every single channel within 15 minutes. So if you make a donation to the foundation, we should not be asking you 10 minutes later to make a donation to the foundation. We should know that. And people feel that way because the commercial world's been doing that for us for some time, right? We expect when we go to a commercial site, they know everything there is to know about us. We used to say that associations were 10 years behind the commercial world. It's probably more like 3. The gap is really closing, but so are your members' expectations. So they will expect this level of responsiveness before you know it. This is in this early adopter that we're talking about here, but the technology is available to everyone, right? They've just implemented it sooner. So it's a cool example. Never thought you'd see this one. AI generated content for acquisition and renewal messaging. This is a different organization. It's a very large scientific society that's been very successful. They've grown over 50% in the last few years, but they have been testing using AI to generate version-based segments that they've learned from large data sets. So they turned AI loose on their member data. They asked it to come up with segments, and then they asked it to write acquisition messaging for them to bring them in. Any copywriters in the room? I'm sorry. So they have been A/B testing this for a long time now. How often do you think AI wins versus human copywriter? Anyone, throw it out there. What percentage of the time is AI winning? 90, 100% of the time. AI wins every single time. which blows my mind. I'm sure there are sad people in the organization, but we'll figure it out. But this really says something, right? I mean, that AI can look at the data that deeply, better in fact than we can, and come up with copy for human beings that is more compelling than what we come up with. I think it's a real harbinger of the future. It's a really good example. This is another very large client that we work with. They're using AI for simulation. It's called digital twins, if you haven't heard of that. But the idea is it's a digital representation of an actual person contextualized to the membership environment so we can simulate real situations with them. Segment specific, right? Persona specific. It's not a generic individual. It's a real member type. So we can test things like channel selection. We can test cadence, content, predicted engagement, business operations, right? All of those decisions that we have to make about member communications, we can test them with AI in real time instead of putting it in a market next year, waiting a year to get the results and then figuring out what did or didn't work. So what it does for them is it allows them to eliminate bad ideas early on, right? We tested it and that didn't work at all. Next idea, rather than having to choose what goes into market and wasting an opportunity to put something into market with their members. So real examples, things that they're using this for. If I send you 10 renewal notices, is that better than 2? If I send you 2 with some digital engagement, is that good? Which content works? What's the right mix? How much of a difference does it make? All that can be tested in the laboratory, if you will, that then lets them focus their innovation efforts on other things, not just communications around member value, for example, right? Around benefits. And we'll get to an example of that in a minute, but just the ability to simulate, as you might imagine, really accelerates and focuses how they're doing innovation. Wow. I agree. Wow. So this is the scientific society we talked about before. This is the intersection of AI and data analytics. One thing that they've done that we found very interesting was they're using it for dues sensitivity analysis. So what's the break point where our dues level starts to impact retention? So for example, they have a dues ramp for their young members, much like you do. It starts low and then it ramps up to full membership over a period of time. They turned their AI loose on that and figured out, right, that they could shift a lot of those costs to a different time point, right, in the membership curve without losing any members at all. Because there's a point in that curve where they stop caring about dues. AI was able to figure out exactly where that point is. It's like, okay, we can increase it more after year 5 because it doesn't matter anymore. And maybe that'll allow us to give a greater discount up front where maybe it might matter more. But again, that's something we can simulate that would have been really expensive and really risky for us to test in market. So it's very cool. These people were ahead of the curve, actually. They hired, several years ago, they hired 4 PhDs, 2 data scientists and 2 mathematicians. And they've just turned them loose and let them have a field day. And this is the kind of stuff they've come up with. It's really impressive. All in-house. To bring it all in-house. Yeah. So I had the opportunity to talk with Eileen a few weeks ago, and you guys are doing some amazing things in data analytics too. And the next time I do this, I'll be bragging on you. Congratulations. No, truly, you guys are really way ahead of the game in a lot of the stuff that you're doing. And those are great examples as well. These are some of the examples that you can think about. This one was also really cool. They wanted to understand what was really driving member loyalty in terms of engagement, satisfaction, and renewal. What were the experiences, opportunities, offerings that really made a difference? And where should we invest our time and energy in improving those? So again, they turned AI loose against their survey data, which they had mapped back to their member records and to their member engagement data, which they had. By being able to look at both, they were able to map how important something was to a member versus how happy a member was with what we're delivering against them. So highly important, highly satisfied, those are our big wins. Unimportant, unsatisfied, who cares, right? High satisfaction, low interest, small wins. It was the sore spots that really jumped out. They're really important to the members, and we do a really bad job. And this was a surprise for them. They figured out it was the soft stuff, belonging, professional identity, connections, all the things they really wanted. They had never spent any time investing in that because they didn't believe the members cared. They didn't think that's what they wanted from their professional association, but it is, right? So we were able to determine that using this kind of technology. They've invested in it. They're rolling out a digital community platform this year. The members are thrilled about it. They're totally excited. It was a 7-figure investment that never would have happened if they hadn't been able to peel back what the members say and what the members do to get to this level of insight, right? That's another wow for us, at least. So this is the kind of analysis that we're seeing, that AI is data analytics. Yes. Also AI is supporting it. Associations just have not had this level of intelligence up till now to drive this kind of decision making, and it's available today. So that's what we had to share. What questions can we answer?
That is a question.
Mr. Unger.
Besides hiring for AI PhDs, are there any outfits that you're coming across that can be leveraged to assist in the types of things that you're talking about?
You mean like third-party shops?
Yeah.
Third-party vendors. Yeah, and we can talk about that offline. Happy to refer. Jim?
Thank you. So just two questions. First one, so the group that did the gift card or credit thing, was that a non-for-profit trade association?
Yes.
Yes.
How did they get around the inurement issue?
These are things that they had been offering already, right? So these are things they'd already been offering as part of membership. So they weren't really giving anything away. It was just a different way to pay for the same stuff.
Okay, because it looked at in that slide, like it showed what membership costs and then the value that you're getting.
It was the
Right.
discount. It's the discount value of what that's the way it was calculated. You get this much value for this lower price by virtue of being a member.
Okay, great. And then the practice example, we're experimenting with that with our private practice group.
Yep.
Sales, did they see, you talked about the value, but did they see like higher conversion rates because the practice managers or whoever the admins are that are like usually influencers in the decision saw more value, so they were getting more conversions from that?
Absolutely. And they market it directly to them.
Brilliant. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
And it worked. It brought in a lot of the owners who would not have joined otherwise because they didn't have any value, but it also brought in their teams. So
Right.
when we talked about expanding your membership, that's a whole new world of folks who had no way to join the organization before.
Yeah, we're seeing some early wins with that too, so that's exciting.
Yeah, it's a promising direction. Hi. Yeah.
So when we're talking about AI, something that immediately comes to mind is privacy concerns, especially given the fact that a lot of the data we leverage as an association is very personal.
Mhm.
And so do you have recommendations or guidance in terms how to leverage the power of an AI in a way that's safe and is compliant?
There's no way to minimize that question, right? It's a huge issue.
Or like best practices?
Continuous thought, right? Part of the reason this is done in-house is for exactly those reasons, for security. It never leaves the building. We're not using information that we didn't have before. We're simply using it in different ways. And we're not sharing the outputs with anyone who didn't see it before. Conceptually, there's nothing that different. In reality, we're doing some really different, possibly scary things. And we really need to be all over that as we move.
With the freemium model that you showed with American Chemical Society, what percent of people converted from basic to standard or premium, and how long did that take?
I can't give you exact numbers, but it was very encouraging when they started doing it. And they probably ran the program for a year or two to build up tens of thousands of folks and then they started marketing to them. And not a huge growth curve. In a couple of years, it was really up and running and generating new memberships.
Aside from those two, from the association that brought in those two PhDs to work on their AI, what are associations doing as far as being internal LLM, large language models? Are they going apart from ChatGPT? Are they just aligning with something that's totally different from that? How is that being handled?
Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of the leading association management system platforms off the shelf are integrating this kind of stuff now, right? So they're building AI into the off the shelf platforms to manage email selection and email flow. And I think that's something you guys are doing now, right? Within Salesforce. So a lot of that technology is being built in, and it doesn't matter, right? If it's ChatGPT, what the model is, it's really how do you integrate with the technology that you have. The point of that being is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's a lot of association-based solutions that are AI driven that are starting to become commercially available. that are well worth a look.
So I know I spent some time with the ABA as well. So I know that model, which is in many ways in stark difference to the AMA model. We know that they actually experienced in the last couple of years a downward turn in membership which led to staff layoffs. But I wonder if there are some examples of where there's a hybrid in between those two membership models where you're seeing some wins. And are those large organizations or mid-level associations?
Yeah, the hybrid is really where the win is, right? So you'll see trade organizations launching individual memberships and individual memberships launching organizational memberships. It's the combinations is where we really see them winning, right? They've got something really great for the individuals and they've got something really great for the organization for one single membership. That's really what we're seeing. And all sizes of organizations are doing it, right? Some of the largest organizations out there are doing it and some very small specialty organizations are doing it. The model is really pretty pervasive right now. And it's very different, right, from what you guys have done in your health systems membership, which was pioneering, best in class. And we talk about you guys all the time, right? This is really aimed at making a group member, giving a group membership a B2B value proposition, right? So how do I make a group of individual memberships have business value to a business owner? It's a different kind of model.
Hi, thank you. This has been really helpful. I have a question more focused on in the weeds related to that AI piece. We are working on doing a lot of content packaging and a lot of lead generation because we know that if we have their email address, we're more likely to get them to convert down the line. When you talk about the AI and it being in-house with your clients, my main question becomes, is this something that they're building or are there platforms that will do this analysis via AI that they're leveraging in-house? Basically, how are they doing it?
So the examples that I shared with you, they're doing it in-house. These are extremely well-resourced organizations who have the ability to do that. As I mentioned, smaller associations are starting to use some of this off-the-shelf technology that can do some of these things at a sort of very commercially affordable prices. So there's a range of things in between. There's small associations that are doing what they can buy. And there's groups in between that maybe have in-house resources that are doing bespoke analysis, right? Or bespoke model design, but using off-the-shelf tools like Einstein and Salesforce or whatever to do those kinds of things that someone else has figured out already.
Sorry to disappoint the folks in the room. This is going to be a non-AI question.
So, Lisa,
Yeah. So the question was, you guys shared on a slide that for inflation, a lot of organizations have increased their membership dues. I don't know if I saw data on what was the bounce rate or what was the drop-off rate after they increased their membership dues, potentially.
yeah,
Thanks.
it depends on how much you raise it. Right?
Yeah.
From our experience, 10% is really the tipping point. If it's single digits, it's probably not going to be a big retention issue. If it's much more than that, you need to have a really good story about why you're raising it. And if you're going to jump at 50%, like some folks did, you're going to lose 20% of your membership.
Yeah.
Which they did.
They did.
I think that's the range. We advise people to make single digit increases over time. So people just members come to expect it. You expect prices to go up with everything else you do. Just don't get greedy. We have not seen huge membership fallout. That's what the boards are terrified of. We're going to raise it $10 and everyone's going to leave. Of course, that doesn't happen. Of course.
Great.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you,
much
guys.
for having us in. I really appreciate it.